Hey, Chris.
Namo Buddhaya. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Sutta Study program, and especially welcome to Ayya Marajina Theri, coming to us from Florida, Baba Nirodha Nilaya in Florida. She's in residence there. She ordained originally here with Dhammadharini in 2012. Is that right?
Yes.
And also founder of Theravada Cuba, and very glad that she's been joining us somewhat regularly these past few months or a year or so with these teachings. And welcome back, Ayya. So I'll let you take it away. We usually start with a few minutes of silent meditation and then jump into the sutta study from there.
Thank you, Venerable. I'm just one of the founders of Theravada Cuba. But let's settle in. Let's settle in and let's watch our thoughts. And then after that, just a few minutes just to settle down, be comfortable, watch what's going on in your mind. And after that, we'll begin with homage to our teacher. So just sit down and chill and take these next few minutes. Let's take 10 minutes or 7 minutes now. Watch our thoughts. What are we thinking? Where we're at. Come back here. So here we are now. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Thank you so much for joining us today. I tried to join you earlier, but there was a mix-up with times. As Venerable Kachaya said, I'm on the East Coast, 3 hours ahead, and sometimes that's a bit confusing for this brain. But here we are now. Today we're going to look at the Upanisa Sutta. It's the Samyutta Nikaya 12.23. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. I chose this sutta to focus very specifically on one portion of it, the portion that begins with suffering. Now, why would I choose to look at that one portion? Well, it seems to me that there's a lot of suffering going on, and suffering is an opportunity. It may not seem like it. Suffering is like the proverbial two-edged sword. It hurts. Dukkha. The Buddha places dukkha as the first noble truth. And this is dukkha of birth, aging, passing away, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Being separated from what we hold dear, being united with what we don't hold dear. This is the dukkha that we're speaking of. So it can be very raw, painful. And when we are witnessing outside, like what we're witnessing in the world right now, what we're witnessing not only in other countries, but in this country, in the United States. I don't know where many of you are. It can bring up a sense of hopelessness, a sense of loss, certainly a sense of anger and even hatred. And there's no discounting that dukkha. It does hurt. It is painful. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. But in this sutta, we encounter suffering leading to faith. Now, Upanisa, I should say a word about that. I saw in the Dhammadharini email that, and Bhante Sujato translates it also the same as vital conditions or a prerequisite. It's a prerequisite. So how can suffering be a prerequisite for faith? Can't we just get to faith without any suffering? Well, certainly we can. But what emphasized here for me, what was highlighted for me, and just very recently, actually, is that suffering is a vital condition for faith, can be. a vital condition for faith. And this is what we're experiencing, many of us. This anger at what we see as injustice and thuggery and pain. So I'm no stranger to suffering either. Just because I'm in these robes doesn't imply that life is always blissful and peaceful. I have suffered from bipolar, and it has caused a great deal of suffering, originating precisely as the Buddha said, Samudaya, the second noble truth, arising in this Namarupa. There's no cause for it really externally. But because I have suffered so much, it's led me to faith. And so I'm intimately familiar with um, this, this trajectory, this particular trajectory. And I often speak to those who know suffering intimately. And I can tell you, I can guarantee that at least in one case, it does lead to faith. So today we're going to take a look at that, just that specific portion of the Upanisa Sutta. I know that you have studied the Upanisa Sutta with our Dhammadharini community before, and probably the Paticca Samuppada. And it's good to have just a superficial understanding, intellectual understanding of Paticca Samuppada to begin with. We don't need to delve into that very deeply. This is something that we study and we spend time on, and we look for in our day-to-day world. But I'm going to share our screen, my screen, and hopefully one participant can share. Why isn't my screen showing?
Let's see. No, I just made it possible for multiples to share. And you're a co-host, should be possible.
I just don't see the one screen that I would like to share. Oops. Oops. Wrong button.
All right, so if you click on the share, then you'll have a choice of entire screen or application window. You should have
Entire
that.
screen. Yes, the application windows are not.
You might need to close or shrink your Zoom window and then find it on your desktop and bring it somewhere you can get it easily. Mm.
Okay, here's one.
All right, that looks good.
Okay.
Are you
So
able to make it any bigger?
bigger.
Yeah.
How do I make that bigger?
That, that's my screen where it's doing that. Wow. Mm-hmm.
It's the entire screen on this top.
Right. Wow. Okay. I think think that's all right. We can work with it.
Can you all actually see it? You can
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
okay. Without a microscope.
Might want to zoom a little bit for some of us.
How do I zoom?
Normally you hit Control or Command plus, the plus button
But
on your keyboard. I tend to find it's the fastest.
no,
Nope.
doesn't respond.
Let's see.
Okay. Well, I'm able to zoom it on my own screen.
We also have the link in the chat so people can click on that and read along on their computer.
Okay, so hopefully that's our glitch for the day. No, that's the second glitch for me for the day, but for us. So we're gonna go down here. What is this? It's missing.
There it is. Suffering right after rebirth.
I had this do you see the screen or are you still on Bhante Sujato's screen?
Oh, it's still, oh, now we have Bhikkhu Bodhi.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, Bhikkhu Bodhi, yeah.
Okay, so this is where so toward the end of that sutta, we find with birth as proximate cause, suffering. So with birth as the prerequisite, there's suffering. So we all have birth already, so we're good with that one. We have that one. But then comes suffering. And this is inevitable to a certain extent. But I wanted to share this sutta with you because I think we're all very familiar with suffering. If not in our own lives, we can see it in the lives of those in the news. And it can be very heartbreaking. So we don't just push away suffering. It's a vital condition for faith. And with faith as a vital condition or proximate cause by Bhikkhu Bodhi, gladness with gladness as proximate condition, rapture. And I think that's PT. I have a problem with the word rapture. I think it's used also in religious contexts. And it's delight. It's delight. It's happiness. With delight as proximate cause, tranquility. With tranquility as proximate cause, happiness. With happiness as proximate cause, concentration. With concentration as proximate cause, knowledge and vision of things as they really are. As they really are. Not as we think things are when we're suffering. with the knowledge and vision of things as they really are, as proximate cause, revulsion. And I know that Bhikkhu Bodhi didn't like that word choice. That was the translator's word choice of the Majjhima Nikaya. Is it Venerable Ñāṇatiloka? Bhante Sujato uses the word disillusion. So we get like disillusioned. Nibbida. With disillusion as proximate cause, dispassion, and with dispassion as proximate cause, liberation. With liberation as proximate cause, the knowledge of destruction of the what is variously translated as cankers or taints, which is asawa, which is actually a very good word in Spanish, but in English, the word would be discharge, which is in Spanish supurar, which is a separation, is a wound, and it's that ooze that comes from the wound. Except with asawas, it may not come out so slowly. It may not be oozing. It may actually just come out very quickly and unexpectedly. So the asavas are where we can do something about this. And it begins with that going back, with that suffering. Because this pain that we have in our heart is oozing. It oozes. So it makes us like we pay attention. We start to pay attention to it. And for myself, in my practice, it can be very overwhelming. And that right there should bring the attention to that, what's causing that. And when we look at what is causing that, then we can do something about that. We can't do something about anything we're not aware of. And the thing is, if we're not aware of our own suffering, and, I have students that don't believe dukkha is really what the Buddha said as the noble truth. They will argue with me and debate it that anicca is actually dukkha. Well, anicca, viparinama dhamma is change, is, also suffering. Things change. But if we can't relate to suffering in our own experience, just look at the news and we can see suffering there. And we don't want suffering for ourselves. We don't want suffering for others. When we are contemplating the Brahma Viharas, it's for ourselves and for all beings. So let's take a moment and locate where or how there is suffering. And I would like to open it up for any of you, all of you, to share how suffering means for you. What, not just what, but how. What does it do? Where's it coming from right now? Is it coming from our own experience? Or is it coming from what's happening around us? For myself, it's both. It's plenty to work with. Understanding it this way. Let's hear from you. Please unmute yourself and and chime in. So we can work on actual suffering. It's not just a word. These aren't words. These are just pointing to realities. So let's stay at a reality level. What does it mean for you? How does it mean? Yes, Doug.
Thank you. Um, if I talk about like just the vague feeling of it, it feels like pressure, like a box, like in the movies where something's just slowly closing in, and it's like a lack of options, things like that. I pointed at specific things in life. It would be like being trapped, kind of, but of my own building because I want to make the amount of money that I do, even though I don't like my job and things like that. And it just it's all wrapped around things that I want or things that I think should be or things that I think should not be. Like misconceptions and things I'm projecting onto the world that don't really represent what reality is, probably. I had to guess for myself anyway.
Thanks, Doug. Thank you. Yeah, those are the classical definitions, being united with what we don't find pleasing. Ananaya?
Oh, I guess I am on you. For me, currently, what's been happening for the past several months or even a couple of years has to do with the suffering of family members. Unfortunately, mental health issues run in my family, and depression being one of them. And recently, my in the last like 4 or 5 months, my youngest brother has had real struggles and hospitalizations, and finally, about a month ago now, actually went totally off the rails and crashed his car. And my brother, who lives back in Pennsylvania, had to sign an order for him to be hospitalized against, without his consent. And that just brought up a whole, long history of what was going on with my mother when I was growing up. And just, I had to, I was revisiting a lot of really not very comfortable or pleasant spaces. Fortunately, in his case, he ended up in a very good hospital and got treatment and started to, come out of it. And he's doing much better. But so for personal, that's a stress for me, is the revisiting of those feelings in me and the helplessness that I feel, that I felt when I was young, and the helplessness watching my brother go down the rabbit hole and really not being able to do anything to stop that, until, fortunately for him, I think he had enough parames that he did not kill himself when he crashed the car. He actually crashed the car in front of someone's farm, and they were very kind, took them in until the police came to, deal with the car and with my brother. So I can look at those things and I can see the pieces of where there are things that were very benevolent out of a very not potentially actually life-threatening situation for him. So working with the feeling part of that, obviously, there's that helplessness and just profound sadness of seeing someone going through the suffering. It's the suffering of that kind that I grew up with that ultimately led me first to psychotherapy, thank heavens, and then to spiritual, at a point after I got through the more neurotic parts of being, then it was clear that this suffering had a much deeper root. And I didn't know what it was, but it really drove me into spirituality and into Buddhism, to find out what was the actual cause of this, and was there a solution and an ending to it. So so that's on the personal level. And then on the macro level, having lived through the 60s and all the turmoil of that period, with students at Kent College being murdered, shot by the state police, Watts burning to the ground, and all kinds of things that were just, assassinations, Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, and to actually see it coming, but again, a helplessness to really, other than my vote, how do you impact that? And how do you, fortunately with practice, it's now possible that I look at that and I understand the cyclical nature. This is samsara. And unfortunately, these are the things that happen in samsara, in order not to be swept away with it. And also to take have a diet from too much input, of all the details of what's happening, but enough to keep current with what's going on. So there's, again, it's that feeling of helplessness to impact what's happening and to prevent the suffering, and then feeling the feeling and moving through that and allowing it to pass through and not hold on to it, and keep the practice going and keep a perspective about what this means living in samsara.
Thank you. Yes, I was born in the 60s, but I was too young really to
Remember that, yeah.
right. And well, there was no internet.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
And it was in Cuba, so there really wasn't that much news. But yes, and at some point, suffering can divert. These two roads diverge in a yellow wood, and one will lead to the destruction of the asawas, and one will lead to more suffering. And it's not exactly a clear choice for everyone all the time. But I remember some of the Theri Arahantis, Kisa Gotami and Patachara, who found the Buddha at the height of great, great suffering, losing Patachara lost her entire family, her husband, her children, her parents, her brother. And Kisa Gotami lost a very beloved child that had, she'd worked very hard through fertility problems back then to have this child. So we can see, and these are true stories. We can believe these are real stories, real histories or her stories or our stories of early Buddhist disciples that did not choose. Now, there's just two of these that have lost so much, but how many more, possibly millions, chose the other direction? And this is what's keeping the round of samsara going on an individual basis, because samsara has no discernible beginning, right? So it's been going on, and it will continue. We remove ourselves from the equation by our practice, our morality, our generosity, and our bhavana. the irony I see in all this, well, I don't know if irony is the correct word, but what I see in all this is that there's a different kind of dukkha, sankata dukkha, dukkha of conditioned existence. And so we're in a sensory world, and contact is the nutriment for all of these perceptions, all of these conceivings that we have. So it's a pinpoint on a spectrum of where suffering can be understood and lead to faith. It's kind of like when there's enough pressure, there's a crack. And if there's morality, if there's been practice, if there's been some of the parami, the Gananaya mentioned some of the merit that may have saved her brother from passing away in that accident, then there's an opening, there's a gap that we can use as fuel, as nutriment for our practice and for continuing with this, what we see on the screen, with birth as condition. We got that one, right? Suffering. And it's not that difficult, even if we're not personally suffering, to see suffering in this world. The suffering of the first noble truth, which is sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, passing away, sickness, aging, birth. And with faith, and I believe that we're all there. We're all there. We're not perhaps having totally understood suffering, because that comes with the seeing the Four Noble Truths in the attainment of Sotapanna. But we can understand it pretty well to just say, wow, this hurts. This really hurts. What if I change my attention? What if I ignore some of this news? What if I try to understand, whoa, I'm suffering for others, but this is really hurting me too. So let's regroup here. Let's take a breather. Let's get some space between ourselves and the objects of our chitta, our consciousness. So we're all with faith because we're here. I think we're all pretty good practitioners. I'm not here very often, but I see the same people here with their very same progressing practices. So we're already there. And this, if you keep the 5 basic precepts, if you keep 8 or 10, or you try 311 or 227, that should bring up some gladness. And this is where really we begin to lift ourselves up from the darkness that samsara can bring us. Because it's not a fun place all the time. And right now, my heart can hurt a lot with the suffering of others. This is the final weekend for hunting season here. And I've seen the diminishing of the deer herd. Several months ago, like toward the end of summer, there were about 6, 7 babies and 6 or 7 mother deers. And for me, that's one of the sources of gladness, is just to see them right out here, right outside the Dhammasala. Well, hunting season started, and now there's fewer. And this happens every year. So what I lean on, rather than letting that sorrow, the suffering for those dear, they feel sorrow, they feel grief. Vedana is universal mental factor. Perception is universal mental factor. They're not just dumb objects. What helps me through these is that I can look back on my practice and find that space, conditions. Nothing happens without a cause. We're the owners of our karma. The thing is, when we begin to practice, then we can begin to help others. Even our energy field changes. I'm not going to get metaphysical or, hokey pokey on you, on anybody here, but our energy field changes. We become pleasant to be around. The deer aren't fearful around us. And tangentially, I'm very, very careful not to wear orange. I've been given some orange t-shirts. Orange is the color the hunters wear, and I don't want to confuse them. So I do actively work for a good relationship with our deer. But also, because we're not angry with the suffering, we're not pushing it away, sweeping it under a rug, we're not denying it, we're seeing it. We're trying to understand it. It has moved us forward into faith, into morality, into our practice. We can be happy about that. We don't have to be happy about what's happening. But it helps us to remove ourselves. We remove ourselves from that equation. And that also lifts us up. Now, right now, I would like to hear on how your practice is helping to lift you up from our environmental sorrow, even the weather, even the cataclysmic weather events, parents losing children, children losing parents, partners losing each other. How is your practice informing that so that you don't sink? Because this is the danger. We can sink and lose our practice. And I do see this. I see this with some people who are new, or even people that have been struggling with their practice for years. The burden of the sorrow of the world is too much for them, and they believe their practice is not helpful. So how is your practice helping you? Let's share how we're coping with this in our precept keeping, our refuge keeping, our very, very disciplined home meditation practices. What's going on there? Are we using sorrow to inform, or are we letting it step all over us? I think I saw Daniel's hand first, and then Mary Joy.
Thank you. I think for me, there's a lot I could say about that, but sort of respect everyone's time. I know for myself, um, practicing with Dhamma Dharini wasn't the first time I'd encountered Buddhism. I'd practiced in the past, but I hadn't practiced it for quite some time. And definitely suffering brought me to practice with Dhamma Dharini. I'm fairly certain that if it hadn't, I don't think I would have stumbled across, encountered this community. And I think one thing that I have been contemplating a lot was a teaching that Ayya Sovana shared, the Two Arrows Sutta. And what's been meaningful for that for me is, and for those who might not be familiar with it, the notion of for the uninstructed worldling, the ordinary person, suffering strikes their body and pain arises. An arrow, they're struck by this arrow, but then they fall into lamentation, pain, grief, anger, despair, and they're struck by a second arrow. And then contrast that with a noble disciple who is struck by the first arrow, pain arises, but they do not fall into this lamentation, grief, whatever, and so they're not struck by this second arrow. Their mind isn't struck by it. And the reason I think about that a lot is I think about sometimes it can be tempting to think of, enlightened beings as sort of bulletproof in a way and just, suffering bounces off of them. They stub their toe and nothing happens. And I think to correct that, it's not so much about changing suffering or changing pain, but changing our relationship with it and how it encounters us and how we encounter it. And so my temptation is to want to be the bulletproof Buddha. Things like this don't bother me. I could see any sort of atrocity on TV and it simply would be unmoved. And to realize that that's not really the point. And the point is to change our relationship with it and how we interact and view and see those Vedanas and those events. And so I found that to be particularly useful.
Very good. Thank you, Daniel. Mary Joy?
So the main practice that I've had recently is a temporal context, to just try to place the sadness, the suffering that I'm experiencing, that I'm witnessing, into a big sense of time, the biggest sense of time I can get. And I think it's linked to Discourses 5419. I just looked it up in my journal. It's a very short sutta that says mindfulness of the breath will bring something like mindfulness of the breath, complete mindfulness of the breath will give you an absolute understanding of time. And so for me, temporal, can everyone hear me?
You're coming in and out a little bit, but
Okay.
you're
Yeah, I have a strange headset on. Yeah. It's when I feel that contraction and I feel it, it's right below the collarbone, a gripping. When I feel that, I make an effort to open up in a sense of time and timelessness and understanding of time. And when I can't do that, then I'll sit or stand and just try to focus on the breath and just feel the breath with the faith that that'll open it.
very good. Thank you, Mary Joy. Ryan?
Yes, thank you for holding this up. Uh, this is the first time I joined on Zoom with you, but I've been on um, uh, what is it? Buddhist Insights, yeah, for past year now, a little over a year with Bhante Sudaso and the Q&As, and now with Ayya Sovana. And I believe you've been there, right? Yeah, also a couple of times. And anyway, so
I was there once.
once, okay. I think I asked you a question back then, but this is kind of like timely. Well, what isn't all Dhammas timely? Was meditating. I don't look too presentable. That's why I don't put my camera on. But anyway, regarding the subject, I was thinking a couple things regarding my how regarding this topic and my practice and feeling the suffering of others. I think what I understand so far is that I mean, we cannot lay on more suffering of others, of a third party suffering, onto our own suffering. And I think Daniel was speaking to that of the two arrows, but also I remember while everyone was speaking about the and I was looking it up, but the air of our karma quote, right, or sutta, I believe it's in Anguttara Nikaya 557. Well, it says, I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, or karma, that is, right, related through my actions, and have my actions as my arbitrator, says, I guess. Whatever I do for good or evil, that will to that will I fall heir, right? So, and I thought about, what some folks have been discussing about well, initially when, when there was this whole Gaza thing, and you can see all the images and stuff. And of course, I mean, we feel this compassion, right, towards everyone. But there's something, to that, with that, to of the being heirs to the karma, I think, without something too, I guess, cold. But on the flip side, I'm also heir to my karma, and so is everyone else. Um, So there's an element to that which kind of helps me to mitigate some of that extra or third party suffering. And there's this the compassion part also, right? Where as far as I understand it, it's not suffering with others, even though the Latin I guess, root of passion is, something along the lines of suffering with others, right? So,
Compassion.
um, but and I think what the Buddha was saying about having compassion towards others is just, kind of maybe feeling the pain, and being, you know, um, trying to put ourselves in their shoes, type of thing. That's how I understand it. Um, That's kind of like my understanding of what's being said here in relation to also within the um, what is it, within the wheel of samsara, right? And to kind of bring everything home. You know, in my practice, I feel like that yeah, I'm in this cycle of samsara, and my goal, and I guess I'm fortunate enough to have the ability to do a lot of practice or focus on my practice as much as I can, and have the settings. And so, ideally is to just get off that cycle, of life and birth, that's my aim. And yeah, I guess that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. That was a lot that maybe we'll have time to come back to. Ananea.
For me, metta and karuna, the Brahma Viharas are the mainstay for me to stay balanced and to deal, especially in the times that we live in, that is an action I can take for the well-being of everybody, all those beings suffering in various, my own as well as, throughout the world as we experience it at this moment.
Thank you. So yes, metta is a very, and karuna, as Ryan pointed out, compassion has that Latin connection, which means suffering with, and that's actually, I think it's like the near enemy of karuna, when it brings us into suffering also. But if we can balance it with understanding that we are the heirs of our karma, and also not just those who are the victims at the moment of violence or injustice, but those who are perpetrating that violence and injustice will also, unless they are liberated, like our Arahant Angulimala, who was very fortunate to be a serial killer in the time of the Buddha with sufficient parami to have had the Buddha take notice of his actions at that time. So we can have karuna. And actually in my classes, in my live streams lately, I have been asking that we share merits with those who are perpetrating suffering, that we have metta for those also, because if they were truly happy, they wouldn't be doing these things. So if we were all, may all beings be happy, may all beings be at ease. If all beings were truly happy and at ease, they wouldn't be doing these things. So we can share our merit with them in that way, knowing that the universal justice, our karma, will fall as it may with vital conditions. So let's continue now. We're at gladness. So let's leave behind a little bit of that sorrow and suffering that we've been discussing. We're in gladness, and with gladness as proximate cause, there is delight. And delight is very conducive to a good meditation. Actually, I think it was Pema Chodron that says, or maybe it was Ayya Kema. She says, it's possible that you feel joy in your meditations, but, it's good to bring a little bit of joy into that meditation. And this is how we do it. We do it with some understanding of the workings of karma, of our own morality, of not hiding from suffering, which is also a tendency. We close our eyes, and I saw this on our pilgrimage in India. At one point, I closed my eyes because I was seeing so much poverty that it was overwhelming. And I knew right away that wasn't the correct response. And I allowed for upekkha to arise. And when I say, I talk about animals a lot because they tug at the heartstrings. But when I see the auction trucks on Monday morning and Wednesday mornings, when the livestock auctions occur here in this country, in this, rural area, I wouldn't be able to handle it several years ago. That would just tear me apart. You can hear the mama cows crying, and the baby cows are crying, and it's just such agony, such sorrow, such grief. But as Ryan pointed out, knowing we are the heirs of our karma, and that's okay, because they will exhaust that karma, right? We have the opportunity, even in suffering, to exhaust our karma. So now we're at tranquility, delight, and it brings up calmness, which is a bojjhanga, an awakening factor. So here we are, from suffering. This is how it works. This not the only way. You can skip suffering. Some people have a lot of merit and don't actually experience that much. I haven't had that merit, but I've had the good fortune of meeting with the right causes and conditions, the vital conditions. Happiness arises from tranquility. And with tranquility as proximate cause, concentration. So here we are. This Sila Samadhi Panya, our noble eightfold path, has come to this part. And you know what? All of those other vital conditions, they require right effort to positively progress through them. So there's been right effort. There's been the paying of attention to a point where that attention is wise attention, and also to the point where that wise attention becomes sati, which is its own mental factor, which is just clear awareness, which brings concentration. That's how it is. And, right effort, right sati, right samadhi. I would like to also allow you to speak a little bit about this process that we've gotten to already, how we work with suffering. But moving on with suffering to concentration as the proximate cause for knowledge and vision of things as they really are. Now, these things, there's a sutta, and I can't remember the number at the moment, but about the hen that's laying on the eggs, right? There's this hen, and she's not just wishing that those little chicks hatch. She's just not walking back and forth saying, oh my gosh, please, 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 let them hatch. Let them, may they be healthy. May they all hatch. Some of these hens can lay like 36 eggs before they start laying on them and turning them around, and they work for it. They have this um, commitment, this intention that those chicks will hatch. And so this is also our commitment, that we not get carried away with the sorrows and pains of the world or our own sorrows and pain, but that we look for this with our morality, with our right effort. We find this sati, concentration, and this gap that we can see knowledge and vision of things as they really are. And we're like, oh, this was a bad dream. This was all a very bad dream. This is samsara. And I think I was going to mention something a little while ago and I got sidetracked, which is common. That being in a sensory world, we have contact constantly. I think, the Buddha used the metaphor, which is a very difficult metaphor, of a flayed cow, and every little thing, this is our contact, sensory contact, but this is a sensory world. So this is constantly a barrage of contact and perception that we don't pay attention. We pick one out of possibly hundreds of thousands occurring at the same time. We pick one and we focus on that, but we have the choice. At least we can pay attention to contact with practice. But we also have the choice of moving our attention away from that contact into something else. Vision of things as they really are is a proximate cause for what we called nibbida, was disillusion. So we stop trying to find the fixes. We already know there's, when we get to a certain point in our spiritual development, we don't come back to this sensory world. This sensory world, samsara, will continue. And, material, immaterial form, it all will continue. And we go up and down on this, like the Tibetan wheel of life. I mean, sometimes we're in the Deva realms having a glorious time. Sometimes we're not having a glorious time. We're in the hell realms or the animal realms. And we get disillusioned with it, with trying to fix it, trying to find our happiness externally. It just kind of like the magic is gone. Like Bhante Nyanananda, Katukarunda Nyanananda talks about this magic show. When you're all in awe of the magician and you're standing when you're sitting in the audience watching that magic show, it can seem very real. But if you're behind the scene, you're behind the curtains and you're looking at how that magician is actually producing these illusions, you're like, what a deception. So we lose that sort of illusion with the world. And it's okay. We don't have to jump there right now and say, okay, I'm not going to go to work. Stop supporting these charities. I'm going to lock myself in my room and I'm just going to meditate. We don't have to jump there. The wonderful thing about these things is these are supporting conditions or vital conditions, and the mind takes us there gradual progress, slowly. The mind actually does want peace. So morality, right effort, right sati, right samadhi. This is the natural progression. We don't have to push things away. That's aversion. With revulsion as proximate cause, dispassion. And dispassion, I think the word is viraga, and it's very interesting words because it's like losing the color. So you're already disillusioned, but even a little bit more than that. Just, the whole color just falls away, and it's just all gray tones. With dispassion as proximate condition, liberation. And with liberation as proximate condition, the knowledge of destruction of the asavas. That discharge that we open our mouth and immediately it's like, oh, why did I say that? This is asawa. Or we, kick the sofa. These are coming from just long time of these habits in samsara. And we begin to see this with our good practice. And it falls away on its own. And it can begin right now with all the stuff that's going on, either if we're experiencing this stuff or we're seeing this stuff, this sorrow, this pain, suffering externally in our world. And I just want to say for all of you who are actually suffering, don't get overwhelmed with it. You break a precept, okay, you broke a precept. Take it again. Try again. Try over and over again. Don't give it up, because this is the way to liberating ourselves from the suffering. What we're experiencing right now, there is a way out. So we only have like 15, 16 minutes left. And I would like to leave the floor with whoever wants to share. I would, hear from those who haven't shared yet, but those who have shared, I know that we've listened to some really good anecdotes and methods to see through these things, the second arrow. we're the owners of our karma, creating these gaps, understanding that we each have our individual karmic pathways. Let's see how do you think that this suffering can actually bring us to happiness and to knowledge of how would that work? The knowledge and vision of things as they really are. Doug.
Thank you. I know that going through the effort when I am being mindful of actually considering that, everybody else is suffering and they have their own reasons for doing something that might be inconveniencing me or causing me problems has really helped me with getting angry about things that don't matter and will be gone and out of my life shortly. And that was a big problem for me. And just in general, just being more mindful of my own internal state too. It helps me to stay away from things that cause to stay away from breaking the fifth precept over and over again. But I'm much better with that now than I was even just a few months ago. Uh, it's taken a while, and even just ending up here, in front of you and with all these people, all these beautiful people, um, it was. I'm locked in this truck all the time, alone, like 5, 6 weeks at a time, away from my family, and I have like that problem with monkey mind. And when you don't have all of the details, mind will tend to build details that aren't really there. So being mindful and seeing how things really are, and taking the time to say, "Oh wait, that's an emotion. It's coming from something, but let's look at reality first, and then see if it's justified." But that's how my practice has been helping me by little increments, just suffer less even now, and hopefully more in the future. But thank you.
Excellent, excellent. You know that our mind goes first to perceptions, and perceptions are dead things. They're past knowledge, so they're not always helpful in the present. And so we should give ourselves the opportunity to relook, recognize what is actually happening. I mean, the thing that we hear a lot is, is it a rope or is it a snake? Which actually this has happened several times here. Sometimes it is a snake. But first, you can feel with your meditation practice, you can see how the mind slows down and it doesn't jump at that first perception. It slows down and you can see the shape of the rope, the color of the rope. Does the rope have a head? Is there movement? All of these things are like slow motion. And this is how meditation helps you to keep from jumping to that same old perception, that same old habit of whatever it is. We all have our different habits that we kind of use like crutches. I mean, and sometimes it's almost like we don't want to see anymore. Let's just not look that way. Let's just bury our head in the sand. And this perpetuates. So, yeah, and especially being alone in a van away from the mind would definitely keep filling in the gaps incorrectly, leading us, all over the place. Very good for you to be seeing that. Yeah, don't stop. Nanea.
I think you took part of words out of my mouth. Is that the main thing is don't stop.
Right.
Because meditation, from just speaking from my experience and those of Kalyanamitta's, you can have dry periods where it doesn't seem like anything is happening, but you still show up, you still do it. And the main thing for me, especially if I'm around friends who are not practitioners, long-term friends and family members or whatever, is just in conversation and seeing how people process and where they go with things or whatever is a real gauge of how far in one's perceptions and thinking, that I'm so grateful that I have chosen this way and will continue, because it gives me such comfort that even when feel myself going squirrely bird, I can pull it back, I can look at it, and I can let it go, and really, or just stay with it long enough for it, to pass. And right now, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have a practice. I think I'd be in continuous despair. So I'm very, very grateful for practice, and just keep on.
Sadhu. Yes. Even if it seems like it's not going anywhere, it's going. It takes a while. And it takes doing it when you don't want to do it. 'Cause we may not be able to see our progress if we look back last month, I was still doing the same stuff. But if you look back 5 years, you look back a little longer, you see the progress. I think Richard, you're next.
Thank you, Ayya. First, I'd just like to thank Doug for being a truck driver. Almost everything that we have in our homes comes through trucking. And so it's a very noble profession. It helps society a lot. Second of all, I'd like to recommend to him that if he hasn't done it already, that he get something like Audible is on Android, through Amazon. You can get Bhikkhu Bodhi's translations of Majjhima Nikaya and Samyutta Nikaya and Bhikkhu Sujat, I think it is, translations of Anguttara Nikaya and Digha Nikaya, and you can just listen to those. I listen every day, several hours a day to sutras, so it's very helpful for me. The other thing I'd like to say is there was that controversy that you brought up initially about some students saying that suffering comes from anicca. And yes, Buddha does say anicca, dukkha, anatta. But if you go to Majjhima Nikaya, number 26, actually, I've got to go over here. Yeah, section 13 and on, where the Buddha talks about himself leaving in search of enlightenment. He says when he became a bodhisattva, he said he began to say to himself, why, being myself subject to birth, do I seek after that which is also subject to birth? Why, being myself subject to aging, sickness, and death, sorrow, and defilements, do I seek what is also subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilements? So he has this thought for a period of time, and then finally he decides to leave home. And he says, well, both his parents were crying and everything. He shaved his head and he put on the yellow robe, and he left home. And he says specifically that seeing the danger in birth and the resultant suffering, and that's why when he describes what is suffering, he says birth is suffering, old age is suffering, disease is suffering, death is suffering, like that. So once you take birth, then you're bound to have to go through, to some extent or another, old age, disease, and death. And so that's why birth is suffering, because of the danger in birth and the fact that it's coupled with and leads to all the other problems. So, both things are correct. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. They kind of, meld together, really. They're really not two different opposing things. Anyways, just to help clarify that in case there were people here who were wondering about that. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Richard. There are the dukkha that the Buddha was speaking about in the first noble truth is birth, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, and the Panchapadana khandhas. But there's also dukkha of change. And dukkha of just conditioned existence, just sensory contact. But I was pointing to, when I said that, was that I have students that think that anicca is dukkha. The anicca is the first noble truth. And so we go back and forth, and it's okay. We have different pathways, 84,000 by some accounts. And as long as we are progressing, I believe that we're okay, as long as we don't give up. Okay, we have Chris. I think Chris, and I'm sorry if I will cut off anybody else, but I think we're getting to the end. So Chris, you have the honor position of closing. And then, yes. You mute. Unmute.
Not unmuted, unfortunately.
There you go.
Thank you, Ayya. I just wanted to make a comment on sticking with it. It's been so helpful for me to remind myself sometimes when it seems like I'm not progressing. I read this simile and I don't remember who said it, but that each time you meditate, it's like sharpening a blade put across the stone, and it's not always obvious that progress is being made, but you should just stick with it, and because it is being the blade is being sharpened. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Chris. So let's dedicate our merit, because this is a very meritorious gathering, and it makes a difference. It makes a positive difference, and even among us, but also for the world, because now we have perhaps gotten a couple of more tools in our toolbox. Maybe just one more tool that would be helpful, that we can pull out when we need it and not give up. You break the precept, take it again and again. There's no fault in that. So let's dedicate our merit to those who are suffering, to ourselves if we are suffering, to those who are suffering in our world, and to those who cause suffering, because they will continue the round if they don't find the way to liberation. Share that, because no happy being wishes harm for another. All beings, let's not exclude any being, all the mosquitoes and the cockroaches and all the people that are causing pain. Include those also. The devas that are enjoying and too busy to tune into what we're saying, include them also. Akasata chabumata devanaga mahitika punyang tang anumoditva chirang rakantu lokasasanang chirang rakantu desanang chirang rakantu mangparang. Sadhu, 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 peeps. Thank you so much for accompanying. And I don't know if China has anything to say, so we'll
I
go
can
over.
say sadhu, 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 anumodana. And
Sadhu.
yes, thank you very much for being with us and sharing this with us. And we usually close. May I invite you to lead us in paying respects to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha?
Yes. Can you refresh my memory?
Arahang.
Arahang. Let me turn around because Arahang is here. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagawa Buddhang Bhagawantang Abhivade Swagato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Patipano
Sawaka Sangho.
Sawaka Sangho
Sangam.
Samami
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
May we
So
pay
we
our
can
respects
see
to you,
it's not.
Ayya.
May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you by the power of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. May you ever be well.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
All right.
Okay.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. And
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.